author of 4 books. She's a writer and presenter of over 150 television programs. Her main passion is Raj Yoga meditation and sharing this practice with others. So let us all welcome Trish. Good evening.
Hello. Hello, Javine. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, sister.
Excellent. Thank you. And you can see me, right? Thank you. Thank you for that welcome. And really, it's an honor to be with you today. I know each of us is carrying our own inner wisdom that we've gained as we travel through life about letting go and forgiving. And so I'd like to offer a few things that I've picked up as I've journeyed along the way. Listen, I think you're aware that the retention is not so much, sometimes 5-10%. So as much as possible today, I would like to make it experiential. So I'll invite you to reflect, and although we're in different spaces around the world, invite you in different ways to experience the session as much as possible so that the experience can be a deeper one. And I like to start by sharing a true story of a young lady, and she found herself at 21 years old living in a foreign country, and she had one person in her life that she had a lot of resentment towards, and it was in fact a close relative. And whenever she thought of this person, she felt, she felt deep tension inside her stomach, even sometimes a nauseous feeling. And that had been traveling with her for about 13-14 years, since her early teens. And she had the fortune to learn meditation at that time, at 21 years old. And as part of the meditation, they taught her a technique of 4 simple tools. And those tools were on letting go. So she thought, let me try it. And so over a period of 5 days, each day she used these 4 tools. And when she reflected on this person after 5 days of practicing, and she thought about them, she felt differently. She felt kind of like neutral. She decided to continue, and 5 days later, when she thought of the same person, she felt compassion. And for me, that was something extraordinary, because in those 10 days of practicing, she had not spoken to that person or met them, and there was no change in their behavior towards her or other people. And so what had happened, she simply used these tools, worked within them on her own for around 10-15 minutes each day, and that shift happened from feeling nauseous to feeling compassionate. And I thought, well, this is something worth sharing. And that's why I'm very interested in this topic, because yes, 10 days and such a difference in her experience. And as I shared this topic and as I journeyed through life and did different programs, one day I was doing a TV program, a recording for a 42-minute program, and we spent several hours filming. And at the end of it, the cameraman to speak to you, because I found this program a very, very interesting one, and I learned a lot through it. But the thing is that I really wish that I had learned it well many, many years ago, because when I was a teenager, I had a close friend, and one day we argued, as teenagers do. And when we argued, well, neither of us wanted to be the first one to make up. You know how it is. And so we were just sort of like stubborn. And although we were, you're really best friends. We loved each other dearly. We wouldn't make up. This went on for some time, and in fact, he was called away to war. He went away, and so we didn't see each other, and in fact, he never came back. He was killed in war. And till this day, so many years later, I still, I wake up at night with regret. I still carry the burden of that. And I still think, if only we had made up, I would feel so differently about him and my life, really. And I thought, gosh, what a different story from that young lady. And it made me, motivated me to continue with this thing, because I thought this should be available to everyone. We learn so many life skills, but if we don't know how to forgive and let go, we can live a life like that cameraman. And so as we were researching also for other programs, we asked people, if you don't forgive, how do you feel? And they very often said, similar to that young lady, the man, I feel terrible. And who does it hurt most if we don't forgive? Well, it hurts me. And where do you feel it? I feel it in my stomach and my heart. It gives me a headache. And we found, even as we researched, that it can even be a cause of depression. The Maya clinics, that are a series of large clinics in America, find that when they treat people for depression, so often the depression is a result of suppressed resentment, either towards themselves or someone else. And if they can use insight therapy and help the person to forgive, very often the depression goes away without medication. And so, yes, it's something that can have a very, very big impact. And so when we were researching and interviewing, people were responding and saying, yes, there's a big impact. But then we went on and asked them the question, okay, well, if there's such a big impact, then do you forgive, or do you find that you're holding resentment? You know what the answer often was? Well, no, I find it really hard to forgive. And so we know that we suffer. We know that we will gain by letting go, by forgiving. Yet we find it very hard to do it sometimes. And so we looked more at it, and we asked them, why then? Why then? If you know basically you're really hurting yourself, and physically and mentally, why not? What do you think? Can I just give you a few seconds just to think about it? Why do I hold on in a way that hurts myself? Why wouldn't I forgive? Why wouldn't I gift that to myself? I'm sure you all have a lot of different answers. What we found when we were asking people as part of the interviews is that they said that, well, if I forgive, it kind of means that I'm losing. I'm letting that person off the hook. I don't know how many hands up for that out there, but it's sort of a thing, like almost like I have to be the universal police person and punish them for what they've done. But then when we think like that, we're forgetting a universal law that everyone is writing their own account. And just as we have bank accounts and we know how much we put in and we take out, and if we take out more than we put in, we're in the red. In the same way, each of our actions is writing an account, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. And I solely myself am responsible for mine. And that person that I'm carrying resentment for is responsible for theirs. And so I don't need to think about punishing them by not forgiving. I'm the one that suffers by that because I'm creating a low vibration of resentment. I'm creating a negative account or a minus in my account for myself. And so if I understand that they are carrying their account, that is with them, mine is with mine, and if I create a low vibration, it's a minus in mine, then it makes it that little bit easier to forgive. And I think another aspect that we found is that sometimes people thought that, okay, if I forgive them, then that means I'm going to let them hurt me again. No, forgiveness is, or letting go, is a step that I take. It allows my mind to become clear and objective. And from that point, I may see, well, I'm going to change the way that I work with them, or the way that I respond to them, or I might change the amount of time that I spend with them, or I'll change something else about our relationship. So it doesn't mean that if I let go, that I allow myself to be a doormat or to be hurt. No, not at all. And I think they were some of the key things that people said. And really, perhaps you have some other reasons. I think the other thing that gets in the way is that little word that's used very popularly in any language, and the shortest word in the English language, I, or ego. So again, the ego feels that it's losing. And so we have to work with the ego and have a conversation with it and allow it to understand that if I don't let go of this, I damage myself. So out of love to myself and also the world, basically, because if I carry resentment, anger, revenge, I am vibrating at a very low level. And does the world need any more low vibrations? And so if I let go, I'm raising my vibration up into vibrations of acceptance, understanding, wisdom, love, freedom. And so I'm raising not only my vibration, but the collective global vibration. And that's certainly healthy for the world right now. And so understanding all of this, then perhaps we can move on and really look at the aspect of letting go and going through these steps. But I've been using these steps for quite a long time. And, you know, it was about a year and a half ago, I was in Chicago and I was using these steps with a group. And there was a psychiatrist there, and he was perhaps around 75 years old. And at the end of the session, he said to me, you know, I'd like to share something. And he said, only today, and you know, I practiced psychiatry for 40 something years. I had so many, I had so many, you know, clients over that time. And yes, I didn't realize something very deeply about myself, that I had forgotten to let go. I had not forgotten, but I had a brother, and I didn't realize that I lived almost my entire life until today in this session with a lot of resentment to him, because my father compared me negatively with him for my whole life. And I simply didn't realize that I was carrying that. And so, you know, isn't that amazing? He had so much knowledge of psychiatry, of the mind. He practiced, he treated so many people, but he didn't realize. And I asked him, well, look, what is it that allowed you to do it today at this point in your life? And with these 4 very simple tools. And he said, you know, I think it was the practice that we did of becoming, and I called it an observer, stepping back from our life. And he said, only today I did that for the first time, and I feel like I'm free. And after this session, I'm going to talk to my brother and have a conversation about it. So what I'd like to invite you to do, if it's okay, is a little experiment. And that is becoming an observer. Would that be okay? And so I'm going to use, because I think many of you are in your houses, so I'm going to use the example of a window. I don't know if where you're sitting you can see a window. I want you just to look out the window, and if you don't have a window, that's totally fine. Just look out the window from where you're sitting, or visualize a window. Now imagine outside, it's raining really, really hard. Would you get wet? Are you getting wet if it's raining outside really, really hard? No, right? You're not getting wet. Why not? Because you're inside, because you're protected, because you're safe. And in the same way, if it was really, really hot outside, would you get wet? No, because you're inside. You've got the fan, you've got the aircon, whatever. And so in the same way, if we learn how to sit inside our mind and really just draw all our attention inside and have the feeling that I'm concentrating my attention right into a central point, really deep, deep inside. And a feeling that I am looking out through these two windows of my eyes. So I can see, but I'm focused in a very concentrated way inside. Can you feel that? It takes practice. You might have already done this for years, but if not, just even turn around. But as you're turning, hold your focus in a central point in the center of your forehead. And what you get is a little bit like looking out the window. You can see the weather, you can see what's going on outside, and yet you are very safe inside, and you're creating your own consciousness independent of what's happening outside. And you have space from the situation to see and to gain perspective. And you are an observer. You can see the situation and you can see what's happening inside your mind. And so if you start to have an emotion, you can go, this is what is being triggered in me from this situation. And I'm going to choose how I respond to it. Or I understand where it's coming from. And so this is a little bit about what that psychiatrist was experiencing. It helped him to have space from the situation. So he could see now the situation that had happened with his brother. And he could see how he responded. He had distance. And it's a little bit like you have a close friend and they have a problem. And you say, well, why don't you do that or this? And they say, well, why didn't I think of it? Why not? Because they were standing too close to their life. And so as we begin to go through the steps, it's good to have this space to become an observer and just watch. Watch what's happening inside and really feel like you're sitting inside in control. You're steering. You're not being steered or controlled, but you're in charge. You're in the driving seat. Is it okay if we go on and we begin the steps? So the first step, and I know that you might have a reaction when I say this, it's not an easy one, yet it's so essential. The first step, accept. And I know when you hear that, you go, eek, and I know I do too sometimes, but accept doesn't mean that I agree with it. No, it doesn't mean that I agree. Accept means that I understand that this event is part of my life. I understand that this event is part of my life. It's one page in a chapter in my book. One page. It's not the whole story. It's one page in a chapter. But I accept that it is there. It's part of my story. And I might not like it at all. I might strongly dislike it. Yet I need to accept. Because if I don't accept, if I continue to reject it or react to it, it's almost like I can't turn the next page. And I can't continue with my story because I keep being pulled back, or I keep living this next page through the eyes, through the windows of that last page. And so breathe and accept. And for this, you might like to take an event really that you are holding on to something that you really would like to forgive or let go of. And it might be an event also that you're holding resentment towards yourself, let alone someone else, but it could be that you're not forgiving yourself for something. So as we go through these steps, if you can choose a particular event, person, place them in front of you at a reasonable distance, and the first step, accept. And as you do this, breathe, even maybe compassionate rub of your arm. I accept. And you might even want to notice, well, when I'm saying that, I'm feeling uncomfortable. And you might even want to actively listen to yourself and breathe, so I feel uncomfortable when I'm telling myself to accept. Yes. So you're feeling uncomfortable. It's almost like a dialogue we can have with ourselves. But as you continue to do that, you'll notice that your mind becomes calmer and you can begin to feel acceptance. Again, not agreement, but acceptance. And that may take a few days. Now, after I gain acceptance, I can really begin to move on to the next step. And that is when I look to understand. I look to understand why it happened. And you know this young lady, you remember the young lady, the 21-year-old? What she found when she looked back at this person that she'd held resentment for, she saw a young 8-year-old boy going to his mother's funeral, being driven to his mother's funeral when he was just 8 years old. His mother had died, having a car crash on the way to the funeral, and at that time not wearing a seatbelt, all his front teeth getting knocked out on the front dashboard, and crying deeply and being told, boys don't cry. Can you imagine? So when that picture came in that young lady's mind, and she realized the impact of such an event, you know, such a traumatic time when the young boy lost his mother, and then consequently the father very quickly remarried to a wicked stepmother in a sense, and even one that had stolen his inheritance when he generously offered to lend it to her, etc., etc. When the young lady saw that scene and understood his consequent behavior as he became older, it was very easy for her to feel quite differently towards him. So the understanding helps a lot. And we might not always be able to understand 100%, but we can know if either myself or someone else behaves badly, it means they're under an influence of negativity or ego or fear or whatever, jealousy, high expectation, over expectation, whatever it is. They're vibrating on a low level and their behavior is a consequence of that. And so when we understand, we get perspective. So can I just give you a minute and you breathe and see if you can understand where that behavior came from. And again, you don't have to agree with it, but just, can I understand? And knowing that understanding is also high vibration. Resentment's here, understanding's here. And I think it was, I don't know, was it Einstein said, you can never solve a problem on the same vibration it was created. You have to go higher. So when I lift myself into understanding, I'm going higher. Okay? So can you understand? Again, breathing deeply, filling the lungs with air. And after that understanding, then I can go into the learning. Learning. So, I'd like to give you one example. I had an event many years ago and we were editing a book and the editing was really quite complicated. And for that editing, we'd had to, really cut a lot of material from one chapter, which had taken a really long time. And I gave it back to the translator and said, this will take a lot of work and it's got a lot of editing, but it's valuable. And then once we got the book published, I noticed to my surprise that the chapter was gone. I mean, that's highly unusual that a chapter would just be cut out. And I said to that person, the editor, what happened to that chapter? I'd cut a lot, but it was very much there. And you know what they said? Well, when they looked at it, they felt it would take a lot of time to, do the edits, so they just cut it. And I was really angry, frankly speaking, because it was a valuable book, I thought, that would help people. It's for people that were dying. And that was an important chapter, I felt. So I spent maybe 4 days in resentment and turning that story over my mind and very grumpy. And it happened to be the new year. And so there was time, I was free. And I was sort of still spinning this story of resentment over, and I thought, I can't trust people. And I started to see myself going, I can't trust this one, that one. And I thought, no, I don't want to live my life like that. It's a horrible state. And then a friend said to me, in fact, you can trust everyone with something, but you have to gauge who you can trust with what and to what level. That is in your hands. And as soon as I realized that, it turned everything around. And I realized actually the problem was with me. I trusted that young person with too much responsibility. And when I saw that, I spent the next 5 days writing a book on honesty and conscience. So I learned so much from that. So can you, when you're looking at that event, can you find something to learn? A lesson. It may be something that you need to do differently, like it was for me. It may be some adjustment to make. And the final step after we see the lesson. Let go. As a gift of love to myself, open the door to my mind and let that event go out. Let it go out, out, into the past where it belongs. And really feel as you sit here today as a gift of love for yourself and really your world family, to raise the vibration of the world and reduce the vibration of resentment. Open the door to your mind and let that event go out. Continue to breathe and notice where you hold it, not just in your mind, but also in your body, in your tummy. And let it go. And if you ever remember it again, remember the lesson. Remember the lesson you learned and share it. So, I feel I've talked a lot. And just before we go into questions, that was really looking at big events. But each day, my mind is so important, and I'm sure you've read research that says we live a lot of our time in the past, and some of the figures say up to 75% we are living in the past. So imagine if when we go to sleep, we're still turning over thoughts of the day. And then we drop off to sleep, if we can get to sleep. Nowadays, it's sometimes a rare commodity, isn't it? So if we can get to sleep, but if we carry the day into sleep, I heard something recently saying it's like we marinate, marinating your food, your tofu and soy sauce and letting it absorb. It's almost like that. You marinate in your past so you don't get a good sleep. So these 4 steps are really valuable to do as a gift, even as you travel through the day. But certainly before you go to sleep. And it's a lovely gift to your children and your family. If you're working, to take off the hat of the day, to accept what's happened, understand, learn, let go, and drive home peacefully so that you can be open book and really available for your family. So there are a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you today, and I don't know if there's any questions. I'm not sure. I know that Jabin is there, and maybe you want to come in and share something, Jabin, or if there are questions.
Thank you, sister. That was really nice. Before we start with the question and answers, I would just like to revise what you said, that the 4 points, the 4 steps rather. The first one is to accept.
Mm.
Accept doesn't mean, and this, yes, you agree,
Yeah.
but yes, accept. And then the second one, like you said, is understand.
Mm.
And then take your lessons from it, learning. What have you learned from that event or from that
Mm.
scene, or from that relationship, even it could be.
Yes.
And after that comes the let go part. So, sister, if you could guide us with some thoughts, sometimes when we revisit that event or that situation, or when we come across that person again, how should we think? What should we think? Or how do we calm ourselves down so that those thoughts don't reawaken or just
Mm.
don't rekindle those feelings that we had in the past? So maybe you could guide us,
Mm.
and then we
Mm.
can start with the question and answers.
Mm. I think that's really very important, because the thing is that One is the letting go, and it really may be that I have let go. But, for example, if I've carried resentment for, say, 30 years, or even 10, or even 5, in that 5 years, how many times have I thought of that person with resentment, felt resentment, and recorded it in my memory and subconscious? It might be thousands and thousands of times, right? Thousands of times over that period. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So over that period, it might be thousands of times that I have thought resentment, anger, hate even, and felt it in my body and recorded it in my subconscious mind. So that impression is there. It's stored. And that impression in my memory is triggered when I see that person. Naturally, because I have stored such a deep amount of impressions there, when I see them, it will be triggered. So logically, that's just logic, that I have to cancel that impression out. Otherwise, even to the best of my good intentions, I want to be able to be positive towards them, but the store of negative memories is there, and that emotion and memory will be triggered when I see them or hear their name even. And so that's why I have to create a new positive impression towards them. And it may not be I love them, but at least I understand this person is controlled by their emotion, they're controlled by their upbringing, they're controlled by their story, and I see them with understanding. I understand they are controlled, and each time I can see that, I can feel at least understanding for them. I'm creating a new memory, and that's overriding the negative one. So I have to do the work, basically. I created the memory of resentment or anger and stored it. I have to cancel it out by creating a new memory of understanding. Or it could be compassion, like this young lady felt. And so each time she had a thought and feeling of compassion towards that person, it cancelled out memories of resentment that she had stored. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, even I cancel that out, it's like we store memories of reactions in our body. So when we move somewhere, we see something familiar, it's almost like our body responds to that. So if that person does some sort of, action that normally triggers something, and I see that, then it will trigger the same automatic response. And so what we need to do is really take our vibration above, higher. When I am vibrating in a vibration of love and peace and wisdom, I'm above, I'm like detached, separate from those low vibrations. And so their behaviors don't trigger me anymore. It's like I have to get out of that level of reaction and lift my vibration higher. Not just about them, and I would say really get them out of my story. Think about myself, because right now we don't have time to waste in, reacting to that. So if I want something higher for myself, I need to vibrate on a higher level of love and wisdom. And the more I'm doing that, not just for that person, but for the world, or for the vibration and the community around me, then I'm raising my vibration. And that habit happened at a lower vibration, a much lower level. And so it's like I've separated myself. It's like, you're on a radio channels, different frequency. That happened here, in a vibration of resentment. Now, if I raise my vibration up to love, not just for that person, but for myself and the people around me, I won't get triggered by them to the same extent. It will take time, but if I keep raising my vibration, then it won't catch that old habit anymore. Yes, it takes work, but each time I can do it, each time I can set myself free, then I gain a little bit more power and a little bit more power. I hope that makes a little bit of sense.
Yes, it does. Sister, one more that I have read, that some people have trouble letting go of their pain or other unpleasant emotions about their past because they think those feelings are part of their identity. In some ways, they may not know who they are without that pain. And it's impossible for them to let go. Would you like to share on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. It's like, you've been carrying a bundle of, a backpack full of bricks your whole life. And you just it gets, even though it's heavy and painful and horrible, you're so familiar. And if someone says to you, well, you don't have to carry that anymore. But you say, well, it's all I know. That's part of me. And so I think for that, because yes, it can feel scary to go into something different. So maybe before they do that third step, they need to really get a good sense of who I am with forgiveness, who I am when I have let go. To do some real inner work around when I don't carry this load of bricks anymore, which is that memory and resentment, when I allow myself to lift it off my back, out of my mind, what will I feel like? Who is the me that I become without it? And just allow yourself to step into that. And it may feel a little bit scary, but my experience is that if I just work with it, who will I be? And breathe and give my time, my space to it, I'll find there'll be thoughts that will come of, well, I'll be free. And what does freedom feel like? Oh, I feel light. And my conscience can start to talk again, and peace comes in my mind, and there's not that burden anymore. So it's almost like we have to make friends with the identity that we can have when we let go of that backpack of bricks, so to speak, and not force ourselves to let go of the backpack until we have made friends with that. I would say it's our true identity, our original identity, and the backpacks I would say is our acquired identity, something that I've packed as I've gone along my journey, but it's not my original state. Just like if you think of what anger, the vibration of anger or resentment, it is so low. It's like around 75 on a vibrational scale. It makes me sick. Anger can kill me, literally. It hurts my heart severely. So it's not natural. That's not who I am. But peace, love, what does that do to your heart, your physical heart and your heart of the soul? It is so healthy if you're peaceful and loving. This is who you are. This is our natural identity. And it's just this acquired ones become so familiar. And I remember doing another TV program and asking people, what's natural, peace or anger? And in that place, and I won't say where it was, people almost always answered, anger is natural. And it's absolutely not true. But it became such a deep habit that it feels natural. Whereas peace, whereas it absolutely kills us. It kills our heart, our head, everything, our relationships. Peace, if you're peaceful, do you want to escape it? Does it hurt your heart? No, it's our natural nature. So I think, again, sorry to go on a bit, but really we need to make friends with that nature before we try and take the backpack off. Otherwise, it can be a little bit like violence towards ourselves. So be gentle with ourselves. I think that's a really important question. So thank you for asking that, Jabin. And I hope that's a little bit useful.
Thank you, sister. The next question is, what is your best advice in handling rejection from your immediate family members?
First, I think what I suggest is, if I am alone or, I'm starting to work with that, breathe, because when we're rejected, it can really hurt. And so breathe deeply and notice where I'm holding the rejection in my body. Be compassionate. Rub my arm. And I would do something which, in essence, is a dialogue where when you're feeling rejection, notice the discouraging thought you're having. Maybe it might be, how can they do that to me? Or I hate them, or I'm bad, or whatever it is you're saying. But breathe deeply into your stomach and lungs. Have a compassionate touch towards yourself. And active listen to yourself, right? We can also counsel ourselves in many instances. And just whatever you're saying in your mind, how can they do that? Active listen. So active listening to yourself means, so you are asking how they can do that. It's simply repeating the discouraging or the sad thought you're having in your mind in order that you can calm yourself down, in order that your mind doesn't feel rejected. And you active listen in that way until your mind calms, becomes a bit more quiet. And then I would suggest to ask your own inner wisdom. If your inner wisdom has any advice to offer yourself, your conscience. Because the conscience is our wise guide, and very often we don't listen to it. We listen to this noisy, very fickle, fast mind. But when we let ourselves become quiet, we can often get some beautiful wisdom from our conscience. And after that, we might also want to do these 4 steps of letting go. Accepting what happened, understanding why, learning and letting go. And I really advise that. But first, to come down from the emotion, we might want to go through that active listening in that way. And also remember, you are not a victim. You can be a master of this event. Even though it may look like a rejection, you can turn it into a mastery for yourself. And it, as painful as it is at that moment, it can be something that will really advance you in your life and in your spiritual progress. So see it as a master, not a victim.
Thank you, sister. Our next question is, I would like to create a healthy space between my family who I live with. How do I do that?
What a beautiful question. Yeah, I think that's such a good idea, and particularly at this time, I'm not sure where you're living, but if it is a place that is also being locked down, often we are in close contact with each other a lot more than we would be previously. I mean, you are your own best guide, really. And I think maybe the first thing you could do is use that tool that I offered you of becoming an observer, giving yourself space and looking at your situation and going, where could we build some more space? Or where could I build some more space for myself? It may be that you have, 5-10 minutes meditation in the morning. Before you meet everyone, before you begin to interact, you feed your mind some nourishing thoughts. You wake up 5 or 10 minutes earlier and either meditate where you are or slowly walk around your room, feeding your mind something very healthy. Then you go, on the basis of that, you interact with your family, but you keep that practice I introduced of being an observer. You're looking out through the windows of the eyes, you're enjoying your family, but you stay seated here, peaceful and in control, not reacting, calm. And then you might also find, rather than just sitting with them for long periods, you also give yourself some space to go away for 5-10 minutes, change the activity, and then come back. So building in space and also building in activity that you can do together, that where you can, like walking or exercising. So you're doing something together, but you are not, in each other's face. So those kind of activities. Also, if you notice that you're lowering your vibration, if I talk about vibration, so giving space also means that we keep our vibration high. When we are being peaceful or loving or understanding, accepting, it's a high vibration. So as soon as you start to lower your vibration, find yourself getting grumpy or upset or reacting to them, be aware and either take yourself off, have some space, or just go inside, become an observer and raise your vibration. How will I see them when I'm accepting? How will what they're saying sound to me when I'm in a state of love? And just play with these kind of thoughts inside. So you're giving yourself, it's kind of an entertainment, but it's also a way to challenge yourself to raise your vibration. You see what I mean? So it's not just like we're sitting together and they say something and I react to them. But no, you're looking at what's going on inside you and you're observing yourself. And you're going, okay, they're saying that, but I'm responding with criticism. That's a low vibration. Let me go up. How will that sound if I listen through the airs of acceptance that everyone's playing their own part? How will that feel when I see it in that way? When I try and understand what's behind their thought, what they're feeling now. So you're sort of encouraging yourself to learn and raise your vibration. I don't know if that's useful, but they are some thoughts.
Thank you, sister. What I'm learning is letting go creates space for fresh beginnings, stripping you of what happened yesterday and enabling the doors of brand new opportunities to open today. Letting go is about accepting what you said, what is happening right now, and not worrying about what will happen tomorrow.
Totally.
There is a comment, actually, not a question. Someone has written, "My problem is letting go. I'm always offering myself solutions and I don't know how to stop. They make so much sense at the time, but then I end up in more trouble than before."
So it means, do you think that means letting go of thinking about things, thinking about solutions? Is that how you understand, Jabi?
Yes, I think that's what the person is meaning here.
I think it's so easy now to get into this pattern of overthinking, isn't it? And so sometimes I think with the power to become an observer, we also need to then pack up. Because the solution may sound good, but if you overload yourself with solutions, then it can just feel too much. So to be able to say enough now, and put a full stop to it, rather than continue to have thoughts about it. So I would say, we say pack up, to know how many solutions is enough. And if you continue to have them without applying them, well, it's going to give you an overdose. So to be able to choose one and work with it and say, okay, I'm going to try this one. Let me work with it first and see what happens, what I can learn from it, rather than having it like a supermarket full of them. But just taking one and applying it, rather than overthinking about it.
Okay, we have one more question, sister. This is the last question. How do I help a friend who became a guarantor for, because he was in a relationship, he became a guarantor for somebody, and now he has been blacklisted for unpaid loan, which has tripled, and he's going into retirement, so it affects his job, and he has to undergo a lot of stress and is depressed. How do I help this friend?
Yeah, a very difficult situation. Well, I think, you're already helping because you care about that person. But yes, I would sit with them and invite them to go through these steps, and even just say, this is something I learned. Can we experiment with this together? Because right now, either he's blaming himself or he's blaming the person that he's guarantor for. Either way, he's angry and it's created depression, or he's suppressing it, most like suppressing it, and it's turned into depression. So invite him to sit with you and go through these steps, because what we need him to do, or what he needs to do, is to get himself in a clearer space so that he can be more objective and think what can work. At the moment, he's absorbed in the event and the suffering, and maybe feeling I tried to do something good for someone and it's been turned around, and there's hurt, and maybe he's blaming himself or again the other person. So I would sit with him and say, look, nothing to lose. Let's take half an hour, sit together. I will look at an event I want to let go of. Can you do this? And let's experiment with it together. You could even play this program for him if you think that's appropriate. Otherwise, just go through the steps with him in a nice, quiet space and say, look, it's worth half an hour, because how many hours have you spent of your life thinking about it? And your retirement is such a valuable time where you can enjoy your life. And so if it means letting go of something very difficult that's happened at this point, then let's do it, because otherwise you're going to carry it into every moment of your retirement. And if it means a change in your financial circumstances, which it sounds like it does, then there also needs to be, again, those 4 steps for that. Accepting the adjustment. And I think he's lucky to have you as a friend, and that you are listening today, and that you're wanting to help with that. And, but I would say, don't do it as a teacher, because sometimes friends don't like that. But if you go, okay, I have something I want to let go, and you may find this is useful, and I learned this the other day, could we do it together? We can keep it private, we can write our own steps, but we could go through it together. I can't, sorry. I can vaguely, not so loud. Yeah.
So before we end the session today, if you could guide us with a few thoughts.
In a meditation? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Okay. So now, okay, and let's, if it's okay, let's really use this meditation to experiment with these steps. And so wherever you're sitting, take a deep breath in, and each time as you breathe in, feel yourself centering your thoughts in the middle of your forehead. So you're withdrawing your thoughts into a very beautiful central point inside your mind, really in this seat of the soul. And you have the feeling of looking out through the windows of the eyes. And you know, as you've journeyed through life, events have come and gone, come and gone. Yet you remain. And you know, by moving into acceptance of the events, not as a victim, but as a master, that you do something very beautiful for yourself. You offer yourself a gift that will raise your vibration and the vibration around you. So you feel yourself breathing in acceptance, letting go of reaction. And you understand that every event that happens has a seed, and there is a reason. So when events come to you, you remain still as an observer, accepting, understanding, and learning. And you know that by letting go of anything old, it automatically is an invitation for newness to enter. So you allow the old to walk into the past, and you invite the new, fresh thoughts of love, of peace and compassion. And calm and peaceful, you allow your thoughts to return to this room. But you bring with you this feeling of peace and of being an observer. Thank you.